Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals. And recording with me on a Tuesday afternoon is Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, as we are in episode 725. And it's our reaction show to the Cardinals' 20-17 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, as they found another way to lose. As after the blowouts to the Seahawks and to the 49ers, it appears that we are back trending towards, hey, we're playing tight games that they don't know how to win. And I think it's summed up, like Jonathan Gannon summed it up, like they know how to compete, they don't know how to win. And I don't know if there's been ever a more accurate description of a team than what the Cardinals are right now. They know how to compete, but I was talking with my son. They are such a low leverage team. They're the same offensively and defensively, that when it's low leverage, they produce. When it's high leverage and high stakes, they crumble both offensively and defensively. 20-17 is the latest one. They never led in the game, and so this was different in that they were always trailing. They didn't blow a lead, but they also didn't manage to do it. So my question, Seth, as we start this off, is why can't the Cardinals win close games?
A lot of it comes down to coaching. I mean, a lot of it's just coaching. Some of it can be identified as players' inabilities. But that's the thing that we've talked about for several weeks, is that there's just really no complementary football. And you know, the conspiracy theorist in me actually text this to you guys the other day. Like, it's getting to the point where it's so bad that you're like, are they tanking on purpose? Like, I know that's wild to accuse people of, but like, you look at some of the situations, right? You look at some of how things came about and things that happened in the game. And then you go to that last drive, the defense gets a stop, and I had texted you guys before that series even started, and I was like, okay, this classic Cardinals, are we going to get defense folds and goes down by 2 touchdowns? Are we going to get defense gets a stop, the Cardinals tie it up and find a way to lose in a quick one? Are we going to get defense gets a stop, they go down, score a touchdown and win? Like, what are we going to get? And the fact that the defense got to stop, everybody's kind of like, oh, okay. And the defense wasn't good by any means. I mean, the week before Jacksonville, that was a borderline great defensive effort, right? I mean, 4 turnovers, 7 points on defense. That's a great effort. This week, it was good. It wasn't great. It was more than enough to win a football game. And the offense just continues to be, as I've been calling it, impotent, right? Like, you can show a lot of yards, you can gain all these yards, but the last 2 weeks you're averaging 17 points per game. That would be good enough for second to last in the NFL. You need more than that, and that's where it's at. Like, you're finally getting some solid defensive efforts after a struggle, an all-around struggle against Seattle, a very decidedly defensive struggle, but also, special teams offense struggled against San Francisco. But back-to-back games, you had a good enough offense to win. And the result has been, as you said, no wins and basically no sign that there's going to be wins on the horizon, because when your coach is saying we need to learn how to win in year 3, that's an issue.
Oh, Kyle Odegaard put out, let me see if I can find the tweet, and it was talking about the production in year 3 as a head coach. And let me pull it up. Year 3 for Ken Wisenhunt, it was 10-6. They made the divisional round. Bruce Arians 13-3. They made the the NFC Championship game. 11-6 for Cliff Kingsbury. They made the playoffs that year. And then Jonathan Gannon 3-9, and they've been eliminated from the postseason. The earliest, they weren't the only team to get eliminated from postseason contention, but the earliest exit for them since they came here. So basically 4 decades. 1986. That was the last time they exited contention this early.
Yeah, and you just look at it and you wonder, like, how is it this bad? Like, how is the situation? How is everything going this poorly? And you kind of ask the question, Jess, of like, what do you blame it on? And I don't know if there's anything to blame it on other than this team is just not very good when it matters.
I always say they're a good low leverage, zero clutch team.
Right. And it just doesn't feel like they have any alphas that are going to win them a game. So like that's what the question becomes.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look at like who are the guys who that could be. Like, if you're not going to have Kyler playing at quarterback, and we do have to recognize it. Kyler, he's led a lot of comebacks. He's played clutch. There's lots of things that he's done well. Now, has he been everything? No, he has not. But they don't have James Conner to get tough runs when it matters. They have the pass catchers to do it technically with Trey McBride. Probably Marv, like he had the clutch catch, against Seattle. Michael Wilson proved he could put up numbers, but defensively they're not coming with the plays either. So you've got the safeties that are missing plays, dropping interceptions. You've got a rookie linebacker that is just out there right now. The defensive line is not making an impact. Josh Sweat has 11 sacks, but yeah, they don't, and none of his, excuse me, none of his sacks ever come when it matters. They have no one, and Jacoby Brissett is the perfect example of that. Like, look at the numbers, and we'll talk more about Jacoby here in just a little bit in the offense. He's putting up fantastic numbers. But he is now, he's 1-6. They have 2 3-score losses where he's managed to put up numbers. And in the other 4 games that they've lost, when he started, he's had the ball at the end with the chance to win. He's 0 for 4. And technically, if you go in against Jacksonville as well, because he had 2 opportunities to win, he's 0 for 5. In game-winning scenarios at the end of games. And so they have no clutch anywhere. They do not. They're bad offensively in high leverage situations, and they're bad defensively in high leverage situations. And that's been basically the case for most of the season. And the first 2 games of the year, they came up with plays that they needed to in high leverage situations and held on. But the defense had the high leverage situations and blew the leads in the next 3 or gave up the game-winning touchdown at the end. It's magical how this team is so competitive yet so just absolutely inept in the crunch time.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to look at it and see that people just, I mean, it just, I don't know. You're seeing a lot of fantasy analysts excited about Brissett and Trey McBride, or the weeks before Brissett and then and Michael Wilson, and then the people that actually cover the team and have looked at the team and do understand the team. They've talked about this, is like Michael Wilson's very good. I don't think you and I have ever questioned that, but we've said all along, like this offense doesn't cater to 2 wide receiver weapons. It's running back, wide receiver, tight end, like that's and in this offense it's really running back, tight end, wide receiver, and so they've obviously moved the running back down to the bottom tier and boosted the wide receiver up to the second tier, but like there's nothing that's going to show that this offense is going to produce when it matters. And that's why I said there's a lot of gross yards, but that's why their EPA, their grades outside of just yardage have become much worse. And people go, well, that doesn't make sense. He's like you said, throwing for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns every game, and it's like, yeah, but they're not winning, and most of those yards, to Jess's point, are not coming in a time that is important. That's hard. It's not garbage time. I mean, the stats in San Francisco and Seattle were garbage time, right? But like they're when you're down multiple scores, and then, like you said, you get into a high leverage situation where you're like, okay, we just need you to, go 40 yards, get us into field goal range. And if Chad Ryland misses, he misses. And it's like, you got it. We're going to gain 5 yards and not a penny more, right? Like we're going to get 5 yards here, and then we're done gaining yardage and we're out for the game. And you're like, no, I need you to go 40 yards. And then he's like, nope, 5 yards. That's all you're getting out of us. And you're like, but wait, like you're throwing for 300 plus yards. Like, and I was looking back at some of the things that were happening during the game, and it was like, Michael Wilson had 2 catches at halftime. And people were like kind of getting irritated about it. And I'm like, it just, and I know the answer, because the answer is no. People don't watch the Arizona Cardinals play, and I don't blame them. But at the same time, it's like, do you just look at the stat sheet and you're like, look, Michael Wilson had 900 yards in 2 games. He's so much better than Marvin Harrison Jr. And it's like, well, if you take Harris or Wilson out of this game, I would wager Marv probably would have had, like, before getting hurt, 9 catches for 130 yards, and vice versa, right? Like, but when you ask Drew to actually have a plan that is going to get both guys involved, it's like he short circuits, like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And it was kind of crazy how inefficient this game was for Wilson. right? 3 catches, 36 yards, but 7 targets.
7 targets, yeah.
And it's like, holy cow, that's like, I mean, you look at everything else, right? You got 3 for 3 for Bam Knight, 5 for 6 for Michael Carter, 8 for 9 for Trey McBride, 6 for 7 for Marvin Harrison, 2 for 2 for Elijah Higgins, 2 for 2 for Greg Dortch, and 3 for 7 for, well, that's because it was just at that point where you're just like forcing, spamming targets for no reason. Like, you're like, well, we got to get them involved. We put all that effort into him the last couple of weeks. Let's get him involved. And it just didn't work. And so that's, you look at all of those things and you go, that is classic Arizona Cardinals, right? Like, you're coming off a 2-game stretch where you played a lot of meaningless football. The Jacksonville game, obviously not, but the 49ers game, right? It was a lot of meaningless football. And we're looking at that and going, see, he's the guy. He can do this. And it's like, I don't disagree. Jess and I have never been like, no, Michael Wilson's not good. No, we actually think he's very good. We've been saying that since they drafted him. We said that the offense really doesn't lend itself to having 2 guys put up big yards, and you're seeing that, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely kind of how that's gone. Is and I was talking about, because remember the game where Marv went down, he got hurt early in the season, or a concussion, or the concussion, and Zay Jones filled in and got yards. But you know why that is? He was playing the X. And so whoever is playing in the X can get catches. So whether it's Zay Jones against the Colts, whether it's Marv, whether it's Michael Wilson, it's kind of that. It's running back, tight end, and your number 1 receiver. And in fact, let's dive into that offensively. Coming up next on the Rise Receiver Podcast, Mr. Cardinals talking about. Let's move on and talk about the defense. I mean, the offense, Jacoby Brissett's numbers, and what we have for this. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Receiver Podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on the web, episode 725. We're reacting to the Cardinals' loss to the Buccaneers as we talk offense. The Cardinals didn't have their best game of offense, but they also outgained the Buccaneers by more than 100 yards and still managed to only score 17 points. Going back to the passing production, it feels like that they can get, like, in the passing game, you have the tight end game. You've got Trey McBride. You've got the dump-off game to your running backs, and they do a fine job at holding on to the football when it comes to the passing game. But those are outlet passes. And then you can get guys catches when they play the X, the number 1 receiver spot. And if it's anywhere else, they are lucky to get 2 or 3 catches a game. And that's kind of how it's how it was all last year. How it was. And Drew Petzing looked really smart in 2023 when they had no receivers healthy. And so it was just, James Conner and Trey McBride. And we're like, wow, this he's a brilliant offensive guy. Well, when they don't have any worthwhile receivers healthy, that's what they had to do. But then when, we talked about that, we get to find out about Petzing as a play caller and an offensive scheme by, hey, you've got a Marvin Harrison, you've got a legitimate potential superstar. What are you going to do about it? What are we seeing? Not much. Not much. Doing a little bit better, but not much. But and then everyone else, and we kind of talked about it before the season, like for the passing game, like we wanted to see in the passing game was, Marv to get 1,100 yards and McBride to get 900 to 1,000 yards. And then, somebody else either say Mike Wilson get 800 or have 2 guys that are 600 plus. And we look at this Cardinals team, and if we go down the list, we've got Trey McBride balling out.
almost 900 yards. Now, Harrison's missed a couple of games, might miss another one. 594. Michael Wilson, 570. So we're going to have one 1,000-yard receiver. We're going to have two guys that are going to probably be over 700. And then like nothing. And then nothing. And that's even after the passing production jumped to what? Well, here's the numbers about Jacoby Brissett that the Cardinals are our favorite guy in Mark Dalton. Favorite. He's our favorite. Since Jacoby took over in week 6, so in the last 8 weeks of the season, he's number 1 in the NFL in completions, passing yards, first downs, so passing for first downs, and 300-yard games with 4 300-yard games. Like, he's number 1 among all quarterbacks over the last 8 weeks, or basically half a season, in those passing metrics. Only 4 quarterbacks have more passing touchdowns than the 13 that he has. That would be Matthew Stafford, Drake May, Dak Prescott, and Patrick Mahomes. And so the passing numbers are impressive until you put it into the context that the Cardinals are 1-6. And 2 of those losses are absolute blowouts, and then the other 4 were failures at end of games. And so there's something to like the play that Jacoby's play is solid. He's what you see, the ability to. This is his ceiling. Honestly, this is his ceiling that we are seeing. We've never seen Jacoby Brissett play this well over an extended period of time at any point in his career. But the one thing which gives you he's a starter for a bad team and can be productive. But the one thing he doesn't have is that ability to make plays when it counts. And that's kind of the opposite of what Kyler has been, that his volume has been down. But we see Kyler put the Cardinals in winning situations. He's been kind of the opposite. Honestly, Kyler, that's been the biggest knock on his career, is that he doesn't have the volume numbers. We were expecting video game numbers from him when he came into the league. But what he does is put the Cardinals in position to be competitive late in games, and we've seen how he does that. He's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to see how it's coming about and things of that nature. Because, I mean, the reality has been that the stats are good. I mean, nobody can argue with the numbers that are being put up, but they're not leading to anything meaningful. And if people are okay with that, then that's fine. If people want to run it back next year with Brissett and potentially just a new offensive coordinator, that's fine. But my question would be, and I'm kind of scoffing at like Dan Bickley's article when he's like, this is not on Jacoby Brissett, and it's like, well,
how is it any less on him than it was on Kyler for the first 5 games of the season? That's like, if we're going to play this game, if it's not Jacoby's fault now, then why is everyone piling on Kyler for before? That's
right.
My thing.
Right, and that's what the question becomes, right? And and you just wonder what the plan is moving forward, and why failure that is okay, I guess with stats is why failure with high stats is okay as opposed to mediocrity with average stats, right? Like that's what my question is.
and that's where we're at. That's where we're at. I will say there were things to like in the offense on Sunday. The run game came back. Bam Knight had a really fine game. It was one of his better games. He was explosive. He averaged 5 points. It wasn't just zero loss. Actually, let me kind of look at the team stuff. They had the Cardinals on Sunday had only one rush for minus yards. And so it wasn't the inefficient running that we've seen from the Cardinals earlier in the season, where it was like no gain, loss, but then they'd hit for a 50-yarder. This was an effective rushing. He rushed for 62 yards, 5.6 per carry, only had the one tackle for loss in the run game. And also pleasantly surprising was seeing Isaiah Adams not be terrible out there. It was honestly what we kind of expected from Adams based on the offseason he had, what we thought he would look like from the beginning of the year, and just didn't. Although very fun, like I'm going to say it's 100% coincidental, I'm sure. But remember when we talked about how Wilfer Hernandez apparently was the X factor for the offense finally looking good? Because when he came back, first half of the Tennessee game, offense hummed. Came out in the second half, offense did zero. He started the next several games, the offense is humming. And what happens against Jacksonville when he gets hurt and misses most of the game? The offense faltered. The offense only scored 17 points. Will Hernandez is out in week 13, now on injured reserve. The offense is now scoring 17 points. That is the weirdest coincidence because Will's play hasn't been good. Like, you can watch. You're like, Ron Wolfley, I've seen him, like this is a guy, Will Hernandez, who knows how to play offensive line. And it's like, do you not, like, how are you coming out of your stance and blocking like that when you know what you're doing? So it's one of those weird coincidences that the presence of Will Hernandez, even when his play is subpar, means the offense is more productive for whatever reason. Isaiah Adams played much better. The pass protection was better. It wasn't. He still was hit 7 times. He was sacked twice, and it was the problem was it came in bunches. That he had the one drive and the one possession where they went 3 and out and went sack, hit, sack, and so it was kind of a disaster. But overall, the offensive line play in the run game was better, and there wasn't anything noticeably bad about Kelvin Beachum. Isaiah Adams actually looked solid. And the passing game, they kept it up, obviously. And we look at the numbers, they had nearly 400 yards of offense, outgaining Tampa Bay by 107 yards, and still managed to lose. And so there were things to like. Trey McBride is continuing to dominate. He leads the NFL in receptions right now with 88. He's on pace for 124 receptions, which would set a Cardinals record and would set a tight end NFL record. He's pacing for just over 1,200 yards. And so there's definitely some positives. And the fact that his 2024 season in terms of touchdown scoring was anomalous. It was fluky because now the usage in the red zone is leading to touchdowns. And this is the kind of production that we thought he could have. Unfortunately, the offense, as we said before, the offense is a high production unit in low leverage situations.
Yeah, and that's what the issue becomes. And it's just interesting that the offense is doing all of this outgaining their opponents. This was the first game in a while they haven't outpossessed their opponents, but they're doing all of this, and they're just not scoring. And that becomes a consistent issue.
They're missing field goals.
Yep.
Throwing interceptions at bad times. That happens. He's throwing interceptions at a low rate, but the one interception he threw against Tampa, that was a terrible decision, terrible throw. Like the tipped ball, and when it went to Winfield, that ball was thrown to Jamel Dean.
Right.
On that throw. It was in his belly.
Yeah, and he just, like you said, it was just a bad timing throw on his part. It was he was off on his timing. He missed the window. And then he still tried to force the ball in, unfortunately, and it was intercepted, and that's and then you have the Bam Knight fumble, and he comes back, and he has a good game. There's nothing wrong with his game, but that fumble was costly as well, right? Like they were driving; those were their two best offensive drives of the day at that point, and they end up getting no points because their key guys are making errors. And so that's the little stuff that you look at, and you go, okay, that's the stuff that has to get fixed. And the question becomes, why hasn't it been fixed? And to me, the answer is that it's just there's no, and I get that there's injuries, so I want that to be understood, but there's no worry. Like the players are like, what are they going to do? Bench me? Like, so who cares, right? Like, oh, we made a mistake. Oh, well, and that's the thing. And to be fair, that's the attitude the head coach has, right? Like, and I get it. He showed a little emotion one time with Amari DiMercato and ended up costing them 6 figures, right? Like, and so that's a situation where he looks at it and he goes, okay, I got to go back to being stoic and all this stuff. But the reality is, when you're a head coach and your response is, well, I didn't hire me and I'm not going to fire me, right? Like, and you go, oh, he's not wrong, but like, is that the emotion we want from our guy? Right? Like, oh, what are you going to do? Like, I didn't hire me. I'm not going to fire me. I'm just going to coach as long as I can while I'm here. It's like, or, try and fix this S show, right? Like you are literally on a historical pace in the negative with one of the most historically incompetent franchises in all of sports history. And you're doing things that have never been done. Like, that is not something to, try and do on a weekly basis. And instead, you almost seem like, oh, what are you going to do about it? Right. Like, and so that's the thing, is it goes down to the players. And then you had the reaction from Darius Robinson, which was another conversation. And it's probably not a conversation for today, but you look at it and you go, what is happening in that locker room that Robinson is basically like, no, he's a great coach and a great man. This is on me. Like, I'm terrible. Like, I'm not the guy I thought I was. And you're like, whoa. Like, we don't need that from a guy that's supposed to be, stars probably the wrong word, but like you care more about the negative thoughts about the head coach than you do your own play, because it's almost like that, like those scenes in movies when they're like, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm the problem, and you're like, whoa, no, that's not what we're saying here. But that's kind of like what's happening with this group, and you're like, so wait, everybody just kind of passes the responsibility to the next guy. Like, nobody goes, oh, I'm the guy that's going to grab the bull by the horns and make the difference, right? Like this is everybody's doing poorly, so we don't need to blame Gannon. And I know a player won't throw his coach under the bus. I get that aspect of it, but it's just a weird culture, man. And that was one of the things that you and I specifically, but everybody was very excited about with Gannon, was that it seemed like he was going to bring a healthy culture in, right? Like competitiveness, guys that had accountability, but he was going to lead with accountability. And now it's almost to the point where it's like the players are like, oh, it's our fault. And JG's a great guy. And you're like, wait, what? Like, why is it your fault? You're not the head coach. Like, why is the head coach not holding some accountability to what's happening literally every single game?
Yeah, that's it. It's puzzling. It's puzzling how this is going down. And yeah, those comments by Robbins, I'm not the player. It's like, okay. And there's been there's been evidence of from comments from coaches about the disappointment that is settling, and maybe self-doubt. He takes his all of mistakes personally. Like he came out like he's expected to dominate in the league, and he hasn't dominated in the league. And I think that's kind of setting in. But ooh, oh, it's well. You shared it in the text. There was a tweet that someone shared that talked about the difference between Ben Johnson and Jonathan Gannon. Ben Johnson over in Chicago, who have the number 1 seed in the NFC right now, is saying, "Hey, we're winning despite our passing game being garbage, and we need to fix the passing game." Gannon 3-9. He's like, "We like what we're doing. We just got to hold with the process." I'm like, "Yeah, something." It's like, doesn't this feel right now so much like Steve Wilkes in 2018? At this point,
it really does. And the idea that like, oh, the process, or the process is working, the outcomes are the negative. And it's like, no, you're right, the outcomes are definitely negative, but I don't think the process is working if you're having the same result. Like if it was a one-off, right? Like if the Jags game last week was a one-off, you're like, oh, okay, well, it happens. But you had the Jags game. And before that, you had the Packers and the Colts and the Titans and the Seahawks and the Niners that all happened. And then now you had the Bucs game. And you're like, hold on, none of this makes sense because you're not playing well enough to like justify your we got to trust the process, all the coach jargon. Like you're not doing enough to justify that. So what's the next step, or how do you fix it?
Let's talk about the defense. Coming on next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, especially our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's look a little bit at the defense, how it's been doing or not doing. That's coming on next on Rise of Sierra. Back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, especially our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Defensively, holding a team to 279 yards should be enough. But there were a couple of things that you have to look at that weren't good, such as the 7 for 16 on third down. The third down conversions, the fact that against a quarterback who had a bum left shoulder, and was hobbled, they managed to hit him exactly one time. They got 2 sacks because of the one weird play that it looked like Baker was trying to pitch it back to the running back, but they gave him credit for his sack for whatever reason. And that it was a sack fumble, basically. But the Cardinals hit Baker Mayfield exactly one time, and they only got their hands on 3 passes as well, which 2 were dropped interceptions. So again, with the playmaking, Buddha dropped one, Jalen Thompson dropped one, and Jalen Thompson also broke him up. But the difference over the previous week when the Cardinals they hit Trevor Lawrence 5 times and forced a fumble and had 7 and broke up 7 passes. And so to go with their what was it, 3 interceptions by Trevor Lawrence. And so the playmaking just wasn't there. So they weren't getting pressure on Baker Mayfield. They weren't getting him off his spot. They weren't getting off the field on 3rd down, and then and were giving up explosive plays like Chris Godwin had the 31-yard. He had 3 catches for 78 yards, averaging over 25 yards a catch, and his long was 31. So there was 3 20-plus yard plays that they gave up. Bucky Irving, like, he didn't dominate, but it was once again a case of the guy that you needed to slow down, and the inability to basically keep a running back from being productive. He only had 81 yards, but he scored a touchdown, and late in the game was really good. And so they weren't able to slow that team, that Bucs team, when they needed to. If we look at and the fourth quarter, in fairness, they did do a decent job in the fourth quarter, because they got a 3 and out. After the turnover on downs, it was a 3 and out field goal, and then they forced a punt. But they allowed 3 in between the second and third quarter, 3 scores in 4 drives.
Right. And you look at the defense, and that's the one thing that I said the last 2 games have been better. Last week's, even though the points were less this week, last week's were much better, obviously. You look at it, and you mentioned it, right? Like, it's very few drives where they create consistent negative plays. And I think that's one of the things that I look at from this team. And you mentioned it, right? Like, you went through the numbers. It's just, if Josh Sweat isn't getting a sack, there's no negative plays that are being created. And then last week, when you had all the negative plays, and you finally saw a game where there was a lot of negative plays occurring, and things were going in a positive direction in that way, you didn't get the complementary offense on that side of the ball. And then this week, you weren't getting negative plays, but you were getting chances. We talked about it. You're down 10-0, right? And you get a field goal right before the half. You come out and you fumble the ball. And you and I have been doing this long enough that typically we go, oh, crap. That's probably it, right? Like, it's 10-3. You fumble the ball. You're driving pretty well. You fumble the ball. And you actually have your best defensive stand of the game. You force a punt, and they get negative 2 yards. You force a punt, and you go, okay, all right. And then what happens next? Well, Chad Ryland misses another field goal. And then you're going, oh, man, like, this is just, you get a stop on defense that, quite frankly, I mean, let's be completely transparent, Jess, neither of us really expected them to get. Nobody was like, in that situation, in that scenario, everything we've seen this year from this team, you fumble the ball on offense coming out of half after you just scored, you have a chance to make it 10-10. Now it's still 10-3. Everybody's going 13-3 at the worst or at the best, right? Like it's going to be 13-3. And you get a stop. And so you go, okay, here we go. And the offense again moves the ball. It's not the best drive, but 65 yards. They get the ball in a field goal range, and they miss a field goal, and then it's like, it's almost like you can see on the defensive side, it's just like a defeated look. Like, what's the point? Like, we get a stop, they can't get a score. They score, we can't get who? And that's where, again, coaching, like. I get it. These guys are highly paid. They need to be motivated on their own. And there's nothing there that's not incorrect by any means whatsoever. But you look at the game flow and the way that these games are played, especially in these close losses. And why would the defense ever think that the offense is going to do anything, and vice versa, when consistently neither side of the ball is delivering for the other one on a consistent basis? And that, and I'm not saying like there's turmoil in between the offense. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that it just plays like a team that nobody believes in on the other side of the ball. Nobody believes that they're going to be the guy to make the play. That and so on defense, we talked about it early, and I think it was like the third play of the game, maybe the second play of the game. They had a fantastic blitz call, and Buddha misses Mayfield on the sack, but it was third and 9. In fact, it wasn't even like third and 9, and you got Jalen Thompson just sitting there, read the play perfectly, just has to tackle Chris Godwin coming off multiple leg injuries. Like this, okay, you're feeling good, and he whiffs, and you're just like, what? And I even tweeted it. It's like, it's probably not ideal that both your safeties miss on the same play. Like Buddha missing the sack, you're like, okay, Jalen's there, cleaned it up. Jalen missing a tackle, okay, somebody else will. But like, you miss a big play on defense and you give up, and it didn't matter, right? Like you ended up forcing them to punt. But those are the things that matter in a game, especially a game where you're consistently on the losing end of close games. So instead of getting the ball back immediately and probably close to midfield, now they flip field position and they're able to punt, and you get the ball at the 7. It's just little things like that. And then we talked about the next drive, right, on offense. You go 83 yards, I think it was. 73 yards, 73 yards. And then you throw just an egregious interception, like a completely unacceptable interception. And typically Jess and I are pretty forgiving on things like, pressure. That was just a missed throw. Like there was nothing more. It was a late read on a missed throw, on a forced throw to a covered player because you missed him early. And you look at that and you got the sense that this was going to be one of those games. Now I will, again, and I hate doing this because then it just is like, oh, here's your parting gift, right? Like you didn't get blown out. And in this game, especially after those first two series, had all the recipes of a Cardinals blowout, right? Blowout loss.
Yeah, and they did keep it close when it felt like it was going to get out of hand. They did come up and do that, but again, it just didn't. It didn't lead to anything.
But
It
here's
didn't lead to anything.
but here's the other thing, Jess, that's crazy, like to think about. Right? So it's 10-3, and they missed the field goal. All right, they missed the field goal. But even if they would have made that field goal, in that instance, is there a person on the planet that's like, oh, they're going to win this game? Nobody.
It didn't feel like it. Didn't feel that at all.
Right, and I think that's what the issue has become. Is that now it's like, oh, well, at least they're not getting blown out. I'm like, whoa, hold on. I don't want to watch this team continue to lose. Like, there's no reason that this team could not have won the last two games. There's no reason that this team shouldn't be sitting at 5-7. The two games before that are what they are. It is what it is. You have bad games, you have back-to-back bad games. It happens. But there's genuinely no reason that this team's not sitting at 5-7 instead of 3-9, outside of they're just a poorly coached team that isn't prepared and doesn't know how to win games.
Well, that's basically all that it is. And then one last thing to talk about. Coming next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, the Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web. Kyler Murray. What's his status? When's he coming back? That's coming next on Rise of Seaward. We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web. We're going to wrap things up talking about the status of Kyler Murray. It was announced. It was reported. It was reported by Ian Rappaport on Sunday that he would not be back for the Rams game. They did not open his practice window. They will not open his practice window this week, which means it's at least another week till he practices. He's eligible to come off this week, but he's got to return to practice first. Interesting that how they've been framing this, that he's just not there yet. And then when Gannon is asked on Arizona Sports, if he's like, Gannon acts like he doesn't know anything that's going on with Kyler Murray and his health, even though he says he's in the building every day, he's in the meetings, he's doing but he doesn't know anything. Like, how can you not know anything about the injury situation other than playing ignorant to some game that they're playing, which apparently the goal is to keep him from being on the active roster so that it is clearly Jacoby's job. Because if you get Kyler back, we're losing games. There's going to be people in that locker room that expect Kyler to be back under center because they know who he is, they know what he is, and as good as Jacoby's been, there's a lot of good things that he's done. With the success or lack of success, it would be foolish, or wouldn't it be everything against what they say? You know, they believe Jacoby's giving the best chance of winning, but they're winning at a lesser rate than they were before. Do you think that Kyler is going to come back this year? I'm beginning to think not. I would love for him to see him play the final 3 games of the season. No way do I want him playing against the Rams or the Texans, but to be able to close the season against Atlanta, Cincy, and then in a Week 18 game that might or might not mean anything, to see him where he's at, to whether it's for this team or to establish value for another, I want to see that happen. But I'm beginning to believe that this is they're playing ignorant so that they can just claim, oh, he never got healthy yet. Magically, he was supposed to be healthy after 4 weeks, after 3 games. And he was supposed to be good to go to play against the Cowboys. Unless, and this has never been said, something did happen where he did have a setback, but we know that the word setback is a dirty word for the Cardinals.
Well, and that's just it. Like you said, I think that the longer he's just on IR, the easier it is just to avoid having to worry about it, right? So in the end, what happens is you just move forward with Jacoby and you don't worry about it, because there will be questions, especially if the Cardinals lose this next game, right? Like there will be a question of like, hey, why is Kyler, if he's healthy, why is he not getting playing time? Or why is he not out there? Because at some point, the losing has to stop. Like the idea that you're okay with going 3-14 this year,
and somehow this staff staying in place.
Right.
What?
Well, I have a theory that we can discuss at another time, but it is ironic that for the entirety of the run, right? Like for not the entirety, but for much of the run in Arizona, it's not just the Bidwells, but you've got a lot of people that have been in their position for a very, very long time, and it's almost like, oh, what are you going to do? They lost again. Well, what can you do about it, right? And so that's a situation where it feels like, and that's where, to go back to my earlier, probably conspiracy theory, definitely a conspiracy theory, but like also, is it a conspiracy theory of like, are they tanking on purpose? Like, are they like, hey, it doesn't hurt us if it doesn't hurt Jacoby if Jacoby's a loser, right? And it doesn't hurt us if we lose with Jacoby. So yeah, just keep going, right? Like, who cares? And so it's, you look at that and you go, okay, we lost more games. What are you going to do? I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. And oh, by the way, Kyler's still not healthy, so.
And it says, I haven't heard. I don't know. I don't know anything. That's like, how can you not know anything? Other than he's sticking his head in the sand about this, and he's like, la 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 la. He's getting his reports of like, I don't know what's happening. That way he can just play that, and he can tell everyone in the media, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Oh, and that's what it is, and it's becoming apparent that that's how they're looking at it and dealing with it.
Well, we'll see how this goes. Well, we'll be back later this week to talk about the Cardinals-Rams game, who lost, who were upset by the Carolina Panthers. One of those 3 wins that the Cardinals have. 2 of those wins actually look like they're solid wins at this point, the way the Panthers and the way the Cowboys are playing it right now. But until then, Seth and I will be back later this week. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Run!